All right, we're going to continue our discussion of ancient Rome here. When we left off, we were talking about the Colosseum. What happened at the Colosseum? Do you remember? Somebody's got to remember. What did they do at the Colosseum?
They had big fake warships.
Okay. What else?
What did it?
I don't know, drag people out.
And gladiator fights.
Yeah.
Okay. And why did they do that?
For entertainment and to try to get rid of some of the slaves and stuff.
There you go. Entertainment.
And they don't want the.
So the people would, because people wanted bloodshed, so they gave them that. So they
Is that what you
would.
were getting to? I
They
thought it
don't
was.
want the people.
And they were trying to control the violence of the people, right? Because the Romans were very violent. Other sports they had, and we should have gotten this yesterday, but I talked too much, so we didn't. Is they had things like the Circus Maximus. By the way, that just means big circle. Maximus is big and Circus is a circle. It's a racetrack. I don't know if y'all can tell it or not, but that's what this is. Where they would have chariot races. Lots and lots of different kinds of chariot races. Very, very violent chariot races. Sometimes even bloodshed with like fake battles there if they're doing this. They would use strange animals. Believe it or not, they had ostrich races here sometimes.
I want to ride an ostrich.
By the way, have you ever seen one of those? You ever go to South Texas, there's a horse track outside of San Antonio, and a couple of times a year, they actually have ostrich races where the ostriches get out there and pull the carts.
Didn't
I want to ride an ostrich.
Well, you don't ride the ostrich, you ride in a carriage and the ostrich pulls you.
didn't like Australians literally like declare war against those things?
I don't know.
His brains are like
All right, the next empire I want to talk about, this is the rival of Rome. It's the Carthaginian Empire. Write this down. It's centered at Carthage, which is actually part of Africa, but the Carthaginian Empire is going to rule all this blue area. Rome and Carthage were bitter rivals. Rome was the land power. It was absolutely incredible on land. Carthage was a sea power. These were the greatest sailors of the ancient world. These are the same people that we used to call Phoenicians. Okay? Phoenicia was where Carthage is today. So these people, as they get older, they just change their name. Just like Carthaginian Empire for now. I'll show you.
What is there now?
North Africa. This is Morocco right here. So if you compare it, at the start of this period, the period we're talking about, this was the Roman Empire, right here in red, and this was the Carthaginian Empire. If you were an alien dropped down from outer space, which one would you have expected to win?
The Carthaginian.
Probably the Carthaginian. It's a bigger empire. And it controlled a large part of the sea, okay? How do you identify Rome? Anybody remember? It's the boot, right? You can remember that, you can always find it. And yes, it looks like a boot.
I see it now. What was that?
So,
Yeah, with that like big hunk on the end.
it looks like a stripper boot. That's what the problem is.
Oh.
All right, so there's this great Carthaginian general named Hannibal. And Hannibal wants to go to war against Rome and conquer it. The problem is, the problem is, it's very hard to go to war against a place that is so far away because, you know, the ships can't carry a lot of people, right? They don't have big warships like we have today. They had warships that carried 30 or 40 people, okay? That makes it very, very hard to do this. So what he did is he had the greatest weapon the world had ever seen to that point. They had war elephants. And this is North Africa, okay?
That is cool.
They have war elephants. That's the tank of the ancient world, okay? And Hannibal decides that he wants to sack Rome with elephants. Does anybody see the problem?
Yeah, there's water.
You want to put an elephant on a boat and carry him over? I think the elephant might tear the boat up, right? These were wooden boats. Not a good idea, right? So how do you get the elephants there? Well, they ended up crossing, and this shows it here, but it was really right here where Gibraltar is, this very narrow spot. And they took these boats that they had, and they lashed them together. They put them side by side and lashed them together. So they basically created a bridge across this. That's 12 miles.
Those miles across.
A lot of those.
Wait, where you're pointing at right now is 12 miles?
It's 12 miles between Gibraltar and Morocco, right here.
That's 12 miles, it doesn't even look like it.
I paddled a boat across it. The Marine Corps. This spot right here is the same place as that picture was taken, right? Those two pictures down there were taken.
That's cool.
So they crossed, they took their elephants across and decided they're gonna march to Rome. This is their route, okay? And the thought was they're gonna get down here, they're gonna sack Rome, and they're gonna eventually sack Canada. Anybody see another problem?
Mountains.
Yeah, remember what's right here? The Alps, the largest mountains in Europe. And the Pyrenees Mountains are here. So you gotta take these tropical elephants and march them over these frozen mountains.
With ice.
By the time they get there,
They just made the trip longer, when they could've just, no, if
They
would've-
couldn't have got over by the boats.
it would have, you couldn't have gotten the elephants over by boat. Probably couldn't have. By the time he reaches Rome, most of his elephants are dead. Okay? He's gonna face a guy named Scipio, it's not up there. He's gonna face a Roman general named Scipio. And if you're curious, it's another good name for your future child. Looks like Scipius or Scipio, but it's Scipio. And Scipio is going to defeat the elephants that are left by doing something that seems so simple, but nobody ever thought about it before. These war elephants had crushed everybody they ever fought. They would just go in and literally crush people. But instead, he got his army and he put them all in line. Now, some of you are country boys out here and have worked with cattle before, so you understand how this works. They got in line and the elephants started coming. And what they expected to happen was the Romans to stand and fight man to man like they had always done. But instead, Scipio ordered his men to move and leave an opening. So they hit one line, the elephants are coming, and then they just kind of moved and got into lines. Now you've got big holes. Guess where the elephant's gonna go?
No.
The same place a cow's gonna go if you're trying to move them. You ever tried to move a cow and there's a hole in the fence? They're gonna find that hole, right? Well, the same thing happens with the elephants. So they moved, and the elephants, rather than attacking, just charged through. And then they turned around with their bows and arrows and they shot the people off the back of the elephants. They managed to defeat this weapon. And nobody had ever done that before. It's pretty effective. So Rome manages to defeat Carthage here. They also become a sea power by doing something pretty cool. Remember, the Romans were the great land power. They captured a Phoenician ship and they reverse engineered it. You know what reverse engineering is?
You tear something apart, see what it's
Hold
made.
up. Let somebody else speak.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, you capture it, take it apart to its smallest parts, see how it was built, and then make plans and build a bunch. So they took these Phoenician ships that were so awesome, they took them apart, figured out how they were built, and then they built a whole fleet of them just like it. But they added one thing to it. They added this long bridge on the front that sticks out like this. Y'all ever seen a picture of a ship and it looks almost like a landing pad or something on the front? So you got these ships. All right, and these are paddled by oars.
That is low art.
All right, low art, very low art. And this is what a ship typically looked like. What they did is they added this ramp here at the front. Why would you do that?
Very low art.
Well, the elephants. No, not the elephants now.
Well,
Remember, what are the Romans good at? Hand-to-hand combat, land combat. But they're
so
bad at
so they
sea
can get across
combat.
the
So what are they
ships.
gonna do?
So they put their armies on here and they go out to sea, and when the Phoenicians got ready to fight, they would turn their ship and they would just run at them. And that ramp would go over the top of the other one, and all their men would run across and they'd slaughter everybody with swords.
That's cool.
They turned a sea battle into a land battle. It's pretty smart, okay? Pretty smart move. By the way, one of our great generals in the War of 1812 in American history studied this, and he did the same thing in the Great Lakes to beat the British. So sometimes you learn these kind of things and you take that back there and you use the idea later on. Pretty effectively. So the Romans are going to learn how to be a sea power. And eventually they're going to come over here and they're going to conquer all of this area. All of this. And the Romans are going to conquer violently. They don't just go and go, you're Roman now, I beat you. No, they killed every man, woman, and child they could find. They left nobody there. You were either sold into slavery, and that was very few, or you were wholesale slaughtered. Because they didn't want anybody to come along later on going, with a grudge. I remember what you did to my grandfather, now I'm going to raise an army against you. Your grandkids aren't going to come after me if I kill you so you don't have grandkids. Okay? And that's the way the Romans did things. Very, very violent. All right. Let's talk about a couple of reformers. What does it mean to reform? If I called you a great reformer, no ideas? Let's break the word down, see if we can figure it out. What does it mean to form something?
Make.
To make or build something. What does the prefix RE mean? Re. If you redo something, you do it again. So what do you reform something? You
Make it again.
You make it again. You build it again. You go back and improve something. It literally means to improve. Okay.
So did we kind of take that word form from them?
Form is a Latin word. Yeah, it came in English. So these. Yes, please write this down. There's a couple of big reform leaders that were absolutely hated by the Senate. They're two brothers. We call them the Gracchi, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. I'm keeping all these names right because we know how important it is to be able to name children better. Oh, come on. You know little Tiberius would be adorable. Here, Tiberius. Come here, Gaius. All right.
They couldn't even spell their own name because they're like 10.
They'd be tough, though. If you grew up with a name like Tiberius, you better be tough.
Exactly.
So these guys were leaders that decided that the poor should be given food and land. It says grain. Grain was food back then. So that's a good idea. Who's that going to make happy?
The poor.
The poor are going to love them, and they're going to rise up to protect these guys, right?
Literally loving them.
Large, very good. Large, poor armies that are willing to fight for them. Who's going to hate this?
The rich.
Why?
Because that means that there's no one to work for the rich if the poor are all rich.
Where do you think the land came from?
The rich.
Their plan was, we're going to take the land from the rich, we're going to divide it up, and we're going to give some of it to the poor. We're going to take this grain that the rich people have been selling, and we're going to give it to the poor. Well, I don't know about you, but I get angry when the government takes anything from me. They got angry, okay? Ultimately, they're going to get so angry that the Senate is going to rise up and they're going to murder these two guys. That's how you deal with things in ancient Rome. You don't vote them out, you kill them. So the Gracchi, Tiberius, and Gaius were murdered by the Senate. Yeah.
Did that cause a big war between the poor and the rich, or did the poor?
No, because the rich had such a large army, they were able to take care of it very quickly. But these guys kind of inspired, and they showed future leaders how to get the people behind you. If you give somebody free stuff, they'll vote for you, okay? So this next reformer comes along, Gaius Marius. Again, this guy ends up raising an army himself, but he's a rich guy and he arms them heavily. So these people, he says, you don't have a job? You don't have food? Come be in my army. But here's the thing, it's not an army loyal to Rome. It's not an Italian army, it's his personal army. Okay? So he's a general and he has these men that just worked directly for him. It's the first professional standing army that Rome had ever seen. And he just goes and takes power. He just marches in and takes over because he's a strong man. That's kind of scary. Could you imagine somebody with their own personal army today? That'd be terrifying, wouldn't it? You could just rise up and do whatever you want. We kind of have some of that on the right and the left right now in politics. You got the Proud Boys on the right that were storming the Capitol, and you've got Antifa on the left that were burning our cities down. Those are like private armies for people, okay? You have a question?
No, I was just gonna say he wants to be in my army.
No.
I think we did do.
All right, so let's talk about
Kill him.
the Roman
Everybody's
Civil
my
War.
army.
Rome had two great leaders at this time period, Pompey and Julius Caesar. Y'all probably only heard of Julius Caesar.
I've heard of this salad.
But these guys are actually, they start off as friends, okay? And they're both generals in the Roman army. And they are consuls of Rome. Remember yesterday we talked about how Rome had two consuls? They were like presidents, but there were two of them. And Pompey is in Rome itself, this guy, while Julius Caesar is out in Gaul. That's where modern France and Germany is, fighting a war. These guys are well-respected generals. And again, they're friends. In fact, their family, Julius Caesar's daughter, ended up marrying Pompey, even though Pompey was like 30 years older. But while Caesar's gone, Pompey starts looking around and he wants all the power for himself. And we talked about how when you have two leaders, you can have conflict very quickly. Pompey turns against his friend.
What about, I feel like, does the daughter come into play at all in this?
Eventually. Not in this story, but she is pretty good. By the way, do you know, he had 3 wives. One of his wives was the Egyptian queen Cleopatra, if you want to know who this guy is. And then his son also marries Cleopatra later on, his adopted son. So Julius Caesar is out in Gaul, in France and Germany. Pompey decides that he wants to turn the Senate against him because he wants to have all the power himself. And he convinces the Senate that Julius Caesar is a danger to the Republic, that Julius Caesar wants to be a king. And he convinces the Senate to order Julius Caesar to return to Rome. They send him a letter. They said, Caesar, return to Rome, but don't bring your army with you. Come by yourself. Leave your army behind with your second in command. The second in command was a guy named Mark Antony. Well, Julius Caesar's not stupid. He looks around and goes, there's only one reason they want me to come back without my army. What do you think that reason is?
To kill him.
Yeah, they want to kill me for something. They don't like me for something. So instead, he turns his army, the army that has defeated the Gauls, and he comes back to Rome. He ends up crossing the Rubicon, which was a famous river that separated the barbarian area from the Romans. And William Shakespeare wrote a play about this, where he says, the die is cast. What he means here is, when he crossed the Rubicon, he had taken chance, he'd taken a risk. And we're going to have a war. And Caesar enters Rome with his army, with his triumph behind him. And he brings with him all these treasures and slaves that he captured in the Gallic Wars. And he gives treasure to the people. I have conquered this for Rome. And the poor, he just gives them money, gold and silver and all this stuff that he conquered. What do you think the poor are going to do?
They're gonna.
We love Julius Caesar, and they're going to turn against Pompey. Julius Caesar is going to force his old friend Pompey to flee. And he ends up chasing him all over Europe until finally Pompey and his army are defeated by Julius Caesar, again, in Egypt, where Pompey is murdered. Julius Caesar is named sole consul of Rome. What was Pompey's big threat? That Caesar wants to be king. Well, now what's happened? Caesar's king. He didn't take the title. He calls himself consul of Rome. But there had always been two. When he kills Pompey, there's only one left standing. It's Julius Caesar. Okay? And Caesar starts acting very much like a dictator. This is that 49 BC, the die is cast when he crossed the Rubicon River. High art or low art?
High.
I would call this high art. That's a man's head carved out of a rock. That's pretty impressive, if you ask me.
I thought that was gold.
That's marble.
Is that,
That's Julius Caesar.
why is that used
What is what?
the
Just a different picture.
You got some big old nose.
Just a different artist. And it got stuck again. So, what are we gonna have? The people that he overturned are these guys. This was the original group that ran things. Julius Caesar, Marcus Crassus, and Gaius Magnus Pompey. Pompey's the guy we talked about. We know what happened. We know that Julius Caesar was eventually gonna kill Pompey. This guy is just not gonna be important. He's not ever gonna be anybody significant. So now he's centralized all of his power. He is the guy, right? How do you think people are going to respond to one person having all that power? This is a country that had been a republic for a couple of hundred years.
I think some people the poor are gonna be whatever Julius Caesar.
Yeah, they're going to be behind him at first. They're going to stay behind him for the most part. But the Senate is going to hate it. And the Senate's going to start plotting against Julius Caesar. So much so that there's going to be another group that wants to kill Julius Caesar. And it's going to be led by a man that Julius Caesar was probably his father. We don't know for sure. A guy named Marcus Brutus. Brutus was a member of the Senate, and Caesar had always treated him very well, but he turns against Julius Caesar at this time period. At a time called the Ides of March. You might know what an Ide is? Ide is an old word that means the middle. We don't use it much anymore, but for a long time we would say the Ides of something meant the 15th of the month, okay? So the Ides of March. According to the story, and Shakespeare tells it, but he tells it from a book that comes out, that Julius Caesar was going to the Senate to speak, and a soothsayer, a fortune teller, came out and yelled, "Beware the Ides of March." And he asks her, and she says that Julius Caesar was in danger. And his wife, Portia, has a dream. And in the dream, she sees a bust of Julius Caesar with a statue of the head, and blood's gushing out of it. And she begs her husband, "Don't go to the Senate." Julius Caesar wants to be seen as a man's man, a strong guy. So he goes to the Senate anyway. And after giving a speech, Marcus Brutus and a group of senators come forward to congratulate Caesar. At least they say they're coming to congratulate. And as Marcus Brutus goes to hug Julius Caesar, he pulls a knife out and drives it into Caesar's heart. And because nobody wanted to be hung for this, the Senate agreed that they would all participate. So then every member of the Senate came and drove a knife into Caesar.
Oh, my.
Caesar's body is laying dead on the ground. They just overthrown Julius Caesar. And they've all committed murder. Why do you think the ruling was that we would all have to do this?
So nobody else can keep it.
Well, it was so nobody could
Nobody can
turn.
blame him.
That's right. You can't say that I killed him. I watched you put a knife in him too, right? There's something that's built by this shared experience.
Heck, if I was them, I just would have not stabbed them, hanged them off, and took off the power from the Senate.
Well, they believed what they were doing was saving the Republic. Marcus Brutus says but he was doing this because Caesar had become a tyrant. He was becoming like a king. And he needed to restore the power of the Republic. So we're going to kill this man in order to restore the Republic. But he tries to be an honorable person, okay? So Mark Antony, his general, Julius Caesar's general, returns. And he allows Mark Antony to throw a funeral for Caesar. And Antony gives a speech that blew people's minds. Now, we don't know what the actual words of the speech were. We know that the report, or everybody talked about it, said that Mark Antony stood up and he started calling out the killers by name, particularly a guy named Lepidus, a guy named Crassus, and a guy named Marcus Brutus. And he tells the people of Rome all the things that Caesar gave you. Caesar gave you this great bath. Caesar paved your roads. Caesar gave you the money that you have. And these people rewarded him with knives by killing him. And this plunged Rome into a civil war again. You ever watch Shakespeare's Julius Caesar? Shakespeare writes his own version of that speech where Mark Antony stands up and says, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. For I have come to bury Caesar, not to praise him." What he means by that is, I'm just here to bury an honest man. And then he points at Marcus and says, "Marcus Brutus hath told you that Caesar was ambitious. If so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath he paid for it." What he's saying here is, this guy told you that Caesar just wanted to be king, and if that's the case, he deserved to die. But then he went off and said, "But would a king have given you these great baths? Would a king have given you this money? Would a king have showed up with these slaves? Would a king have defeated the Gauls for you?" And that's when the people rose up, okay? Very powerful stuff. So what's going to replace it? Well, there's going to be a second triumvirate. By the way, you might know what triumvirate means?
No.
It's ruled by three. It's where three people are in charge.
Like you said it should be.
The second triumvirate is these three guys. And two of them really matter. Octavian Augustus. This is Caesar's nephew and his adopted son. He was really his nephew, but he adopted him. Mark Antony, the guy that gave the speech, that was the general, and Marcus Lepidus. And these are the guys that are going to lead the armies against Marcus Brutus. Okay? They're going to work great together. They're very angry. And the army they're going to lead is Caesar's old army. The men that had followed Caesar all followed these. Because again, this is Caesar's son, and this is the general that served underneath him. So they know these guys. They're willing to work with them against the others.
And then that other guy just doesn't really.
He ends up not being super important. He brought money to it.
I thought he killed one. I thought he killed one.
Well, eventually what happens here, yeah, he did. Eventually what happens is Octavian murders Lepidus.
Good.
And the empire gets split. Octavian takes Rome, and Mark Antony takes Egypt. And now Antony's going to marry Cleopatra. And now Cleopatra's been married to Julius Caesar, Octavian Caesar, and Mark Antony at different times.
When does she kill herself?
We're going to get to that. So, they split, and the Roman Empire has two consuls again, two that are surviving. And they're supposed to be best friends, right? They've been very close friends. But Octavian has got a little bit of his daddy in him, or his uncle, whatever, Julius Caesar. And he decides that he wants all of it. So he sends a message to his buddy Mark Antony in Egypt. Say, "Hey, I'd like to come visit." Antony says, "Come on, no problem." So he comes and visits, but he brings an army with him. And they end up going to war against each other. And as they're at the gates, Octavian is swearing to execute Antony for treason. And Cleopatra and Mark Antony end up committing suicide by asp. An asp is a very venomous snake. They allow this snake to bite them both, and they both die. So Octavian enters the palace in Egypt, where the pharaoh was, and finds his two enemies have committed suicide. Go back to one leader again. Okay?
Who is that? Is that what is?
It's going to be Octavian Augustus. But he's going to take a different name now. He's going to change his name from Octavian Augustus to Augustus Caesar. Augustus means like Messiah. Okay? This is the Caesar of the Bible. When you read the Bible in your Sunday school and you hear the story about Caesar ordering the census where all the, everybody had to return to their homeland to be counted where Jesus was born, this is the Caesar they're talking about. This is the most powerful ruler Rome ever had. And this is probably the most famous statue of it. What's going on here in the statue?
He has a sword, looks like.
Like he's holding a robe around him.
He's got his toga around him, that's a robe.
There's
Looks
somebody
like
in
his
the
little
slave.
angels had.
That's a cherub. Wouldn't be called an angel yet because they're not Christian, but kind of the same concept. It's a Zoroastrian
I
god.
believe in God.
They believe in lots of gods. The Roman god, they adopted the Greek gods. They also believed their emperor was God, and Octavian made people worship him. Here's the deal with Augustus, is he wasn't really a very good choice because Julius Caesar didn't have any natural children by himself. So he goes to Augustus, which is his sister's grandson. He adopted basically his nephew, okay? But through this bloodline, we call these the Julian emperors because they're all related to Julius Caesar. Julian, Octavian, Tiberius, Claudius, Nero. All of these guys are going to be the Julian emperors. And they're going to rule for quite a while. You look at this, 44 BC is when Caesar dies, and Nero dies in 68 AD. They're going to rule for about a little over 100 years.
What was 80?
After death, after the death of Jesus. We call this time period the Pax Romana. Write this down. Pax Romana means the peace of Rome, or the Roman peace. Why do you think the world became peaceful in this time period?
Because there was one leader, there wasn't anyone.
And Rome was so powerful that nobody dared challenge them. Okay? From 27 BCE to 180 CE. How many years is that? About 210 years, roughly? Okay? So about 200 years of relative peace. Now that doesn't mean there wasn't any wars, but if there was a war, it was very, very quick. This is all Roman art from the time period, so you kind of get a feel for what was going on. This is what Roman money looked like. You can still find this all over Europe. And the Roman Empire by 14 CE is going to control all of this purple area. Pretty impressive from a place that started right there. Right? We'll pick up with the rise of Christianity tomorrow.